Hello my friends, welcome to another YouTube video. Today we are going to paint these poppies. They're bright and colorful and fluffy, and I know you love poppies because I love poppies. I had just finished an Open Studios weekend a couple of days ago, and I will have for you an Open Studios video probably in the next week, but for this week I just needed to paint and decompress, and I know I needed to film a YouTube video anyway, so this is it. If you like what you see and you want to see how I go about making this very simple, beginner-friendly poppy painting, keep watching the video. Alright, so this is the very lovely poppy reference that I'm going to be using for this painting. I just felt like poppies, you know, after doing such a busy Open Studios weekend and being slightly behind on my YouTube channel. I was like, what am I going to do this week? And I thought some beautiful poppies makes sense. Something light, something lovely, something that's just going to, you know, appeal to my heart. So I'm going to pop up the reference photo just up here, and as always, if you would like to download a copy of the reference photo, it is actually a Patreon perk that I offer at any tier of my Patreon. So get in there if you like to have a reference photo to assist you. Otherwise, it's completely fine to follow me here with this tutorial, just brushstroke by brushstroke. I am using my 100% cotton cold press medium watercolor paper. If you would like a 10% discount, the code is Crystal10, link in the description below. I love this watercolor paper. It's pretty much the same as Bao Hong Academy if you use that, and which is awesome, almost like Arches if you ask me. All right, so I'm starting with my square brush. In fact, I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat, because the 1/2 inch might be a little bit too narrow. So my 3/4 inch flat. I love this brush, Princeton Heritage. It is fun to use when I want to really paint loose, paint fast. Okay, so my first poppy that I'm going to use, I'm basically going to use all the dirty pink water I have on my palette, which is how I start 90% of my painting if you follow me here on my channel. If you don't have any dirty pink water, just grab some whatever pink you have, permanent rose, opera rose, and then dilute it with a ton of water. Get your brush really soaked. And I'm gonna go in with the first poppy, which is up here, and then just pressing the brush down and creating these lovely petal shapes. The first one is always going to be a little bit wonky because you're getting used to the paper, getting used to the brush again. I mean, especially if you haven't painted for a while, and this is going to be my first painting today, so I was going to tape the edges, but I forgot. So if you want to tape the edges, not the edges, yeah, the edges with masking tape, it's always a nice idea, but oh well, I'm gonna paint right to the edge then, it's fine. So this first one is looking a little bit like monotone, it's all gonna be the same, but now I'm gonna grab some deeper permanent rose and just dropping in some of that around here and there, you know. You can use the reference photo to just look for spots where you might find a deeper tone. I'm gonna grab some yellow ochre as well to drop it in here and there. Yellow ochre is a color I've been using a lot more lately, and I'm just gonna spray my paints just a tad more. So this palette and the paints, all of this can be found in the description below if you're interested to know where I get all my supplies are. I love this palette. It's a Shinhan. Is it Shinhan? Yes, it's a Shinhan with lots of wells. I like it. It's really deep. I enjoy using it. I find it hard to change. it up now that I have this palette. All right, so just keep this one very first, very loose, very watery. Actually, before we go on, I thought I might show you a couple of poppies that I did yesterday. So after my open studios, I just wanted to relax with some poppies. So I got out my sketchbook, and this is a Timu one. And I just went in with some first layers of poppies. So actually this is kind of like what I want to achieve today. Thought I might show you that. So very loose, it's got no details yet. We'll do details in hours, all right? So as you can see, nice and loose. And let's go into the second one. So the second one is slightly more of a peachy tone. So with that pink mix, grab a tiny bit of orange and maybe a touch of yellow. And then you get a nice soft peach. Lots of water because these poppies are really light and fluffy. And this one is slightly facing up that way. So I'm just kind of like trying to get that going. Grabbing a bit of lemon yellow and dropping that in. You can use yellow ochre again if you like. And then there's a bit of like a shadow down here. So burnt umber right onto these petals. Leaving a white space in the middle for now. So I'll go in later with something else. All right, so just, as you can see, very loose. Just let the paint mix. All right, I'm going to paint a really bright one down here. So using my Scarlet Lake with more pigmented than you would think you need. So like almost like a cream / butter consistency. And this one is really upturned, looking up that way. So there we go. Then maybe dropping a little bit of alizarin crimson into some bits, because you always want a little bit of shadow when you're in the wet stage. And then maybe lifting up here, just lift. So just dry your brush with some paper towel and then lift to get a bit of highlight. Don't know, looks weird actually. I'm going to drop in some yellow in that lifted stage. Okay, so I'm working this painting from top to down, which is not my usual way of painting. Usually I start somewhere here and then somewhere from the center and then work my way out. But for this painting, because I'm looking at this reference, and this reference is very much, it's like a close-up of these poppies, isn't it? It's like a bit of a zoomed in. You don't see the whole bouquet, you don't see all of it. So my intuition tells me to paint from top down. I do get some questions sometimes, like how do you look at a reference painting and where do you know where to start? Generally, I start, like I said, top left here, and then work my way around and out. Sometimes I choose the most obvious flower, like the hero flower to start with. And then I stick to that color and I go around. And it really depends on the reference that you have. Okay, so this one is a yellow poppy. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so that it touches this one here. And it's got more of a... I've used cadmium yellow with lots of water. But use whatever yellow you have. If you have lemon yellow, go ahead. Really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to do... Not finally, but there's this really gorgeous, big, deeper pink one here at the bottom. And I'm going to be working on that one. So as you can see, why I love this flat brush is, first of all, how much it can cover with one couple of swoops. And also it just has a beautiful like tip to it. Like tip, not the way it ends, it's a bit geometric. and I appreciate that. So this one's got a touch of purple, so I'm gonna just put a bit of mineral violet and just dropping a bit of that purple here. So the fun thing about wet and wet is while it's wet, you can go in and have a bit of all this like fun to just play around. I'm going to go back to this yellow one and drop in a bit of green because I just feel like it's too primary, you know? You know the feeling when whatever you paint is just too one dimension? Okay, I'm happy with that. What are we going to do next? There's just two more on my reference. So there's this one that's turned looking that way, using the same purpley pink mix, but maybe a tad of more opera rose, just to give it a bit of differentiation from this one next to it. Oh, that was fine. So it's sort of facing that way completely. And then touching in a bit of burnt umber here and there. So while everything is still wet, you still can go in to drop color here and there. So I like a bit of darkness of the burnt umber here and there, because it just gives the whole, all the bright colors, a neutral sort of like background to be in. Okay, finally, there's one small little peachy one here that's just poking out. So back to peach, which is similar to this one. You grab a bit of yellow, a bit of orange, and a bit of yellow, and it's just the top of that one there. I'm going to drop a bit of yellow now in that center. And then the middle of these flowers is mostly like a yellow, tiny little yellow, which I will do now. Still leaving a bit of white space. So I'm really keeping it loose. Okay, so just dab, just like. Okay, now the fun part, let's add some stems. I'm moving down to a 1/2 inch flat now. So getting some green on my palette. I've got my Holbein Sap Green, touch a bit of indigo. All right, the first one is this beautiful stem that's sticking out here. Vary the greens, vary the tone and the value, and just hints, just really hints of it, you know. Touching a bit of green gold. I'm gonna add a little bit of leaf to this one here because I just noticed there's a bit of leaf green here. Oops. And I don't see actually that many leaves anymore, so you can just go ahead and make it up. I'm gonna put one here. This is where you challenge your composition skills, where to put what, creating balance, creating harmony, creating dimension and depth. All right, I'm just dropping in some darker green. So I got this new green called Shadow Green. This is a Holbein Shadow Green, which is really, you can actually just make it with indigo mixed with green, but I do like to just use it as is. Whoops, just realized my painting is slightly gone off frame. All right, so I am just really happy with this one layer first. At the moment, I think this is good to leave to dry, and then we'll come back and add some details. So it's pretty wet. I think I will need to wait at least an hour or so to let it dry. Make sure you can use a hairdryer. And of course, I know I do paint quite fast, so feel free to pause and just go back over. But I really, really love this first base layer. I'm going to quickly give you a peek of, again, the reference. I think I did pretty well. I'm very excited to come back in to paint the second layer. So let's do that. And we are back. The painting is completely dry. And I am doing this second layer voiceover because I discovered that my audio on my mic was just not working properly, and so the audio was a bit messed up. But don't worry, I hope I still remember everything I want to say while doing the second layer. So I don't think I remember saying I'm not sure if I'm gonna, do it a lot or do it very intensely, as in layer it a lot, because a lot of times I just use my intuition and I start and stop when it feels right and just go with the flow. But what I'm using is my size 4 silver black velvet, and I'm gonna go in first with a very bright yellow to just mark the centers of some of these flowers. This is my size 4 silver black velvet, and it's one of my favorite brushes to use in the second layer because it's just very beautiful. It glides so nicely. And it's nice to go in the second layer starting with just bright centers. With the flower on the bottom now, I'm not doing a bright center. Instead, I am just sort of like doing a little green bits around the center. I also, like I said, when I do this, any of my painting, I just really go with my gut, and I just paint what I kind of like feel like doing. Now I'm mixing actually a burnt umber and a bit of sepia because I want to go in with a bit of shadows around the center. So sepia and burnt umber. And it's just very satisfying to put something quite dark quite early in the layering process. Because, the way I paint is I really like to get a bit of balance the whole time. So I do struggle when my painting feels unbalanced. But, you got to get to unbalanced before you can get to some kind of balanced stage. Yeah, so putting these dark marks in the middle just helps me feel like, okay, it's happening. My painting is coming together nicely. Okay, so now I'm going to start painting in the veins and the shadows of each of the flower. And I'm using that same pinky mix that's on my palette. And so as you can see, it's not very dark, so it's really still quite watery. And I'm just, gliding my my brush to get all these little petally strokes out. So some of them is to define the petals from each other. Some of them is to define some shadows in between and the veins here and there. And for me, a reference photo is really key to get a feel of where I want to put the shadows, because my brain can't really fathom this. I'm not such an experienced flower painter that I can make up these things. So what you saw there is I put a little bit more pigment into the mix so that I get a slightly darker value paint to do that. So the way I do layering is, I play with the values, I play with the strokes, and try to be as random as possible, and then using the reference photo to guide me. It's important not to go too much, not to go too little. It's all about finding sort of the balance of your strokes and to make it as organic and random as possible. Try not to repeat your marks. Try not to, have everything too repetitive. Then it might look a little bit kind of kiddie. But of course, if kiddie is the effect you are going for, then for sure go for it. But if you want to have your painting feel a little bit more sort of sophisticated and advanced, if you will, the trick that I found is just to really try to make these layers and strokes as random as possible. How I learned to, put in strokes and layers is really just observing how my favorite artists do it, and then study their paintings and then replicate, replicate a couple of your favorite paintings, stroke by stroke, mark by mark, and then you'll find that you will sort of incorporate the marks that you like into your paintings when you do it, and leave out the ones that don't feel right when you do it. And when I mean do it is like when you get a reference photo and you paint on your own. Or if you're following me like this on YouTube, I don't expect you to, repeat every single mark. I think it'll be insanity because what I do is really quite random. And I do see it, for those of you that tag me on your paintings on Instagram. By the way, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, please do. I'm at Crystal Tan Art, which is the same handle as my YouTube channel. If you have an art account or you like to upload your paintings as well, please do so. Tag me. What I was trying to say is that I have seen so many people's tutorials, paintings of my tutorials, and they all look different. You all have your own mark. You all have your own unique style. And that makes me so proud. It makes me so proud to see everybody's version of my painting. And I think that's because my instructions or my step-by-step aren't really step-by-step. You are really just seeing kind of like how I'm just sort of like putting things here and there, following my gut as I do so. All right, so I am going to do the yellow one now, the yellow flower. And it felt a bit weird to just jump to yellow because as you see, the previous 4 have been, that pinky hue. And now I'm creating, I'm trying to choose a yellow shadow mark. So I got burnt umber and some yellow. Then I realized it's too brown, so I just added a bit of green and kept going. So just play along, mix up colors as you go. And it's no error at all when you put down a color that maybe wasn't the completely right color. It's fine. It adds to the character and the uniqueness of your painting. It really, really does. You have no idea how random and like mistakey all my paintings really are. It might seem like I'm so confident and I know what I'm doing. And actually, almost everything is an experiment. Everything is trial and error. And we are honestly our worst critics. We see our flaws way more than other people see. So train yourself to not see your flaws so much, or rather, when you know that what you did was a flaw and you wish you could have done better, then just do better in that next stroke, like in the moment. Change it up as you go, and then drop everything, all the anxiety that you might have. So I just changed up to a liner brush, or some people call it a rigger brush. I have a size 1 liner because this brush is actually really nice to make long, thin strokes, because this last poppy is actually quite large. And you can see I'm taking a bit of a time I'm struggling a bit to warm up this brush. The first few strokes were a bit like eh. But, it takes time. It takes time and it's totally fine. Embrace the mistakes, people. I really, really tell you, the mistakes are what makes our painting special and just uniquely us. Why do we want to be robots? Why do we want to be like AI? Smudges and errors and blooms and bleeds, all of that. I mean, there's a reason why you love this style of watercolor, isn't it? There's a reason why you're here watching my channel, why you like to paint loosely, and big part of it is just letting the mistakes happen. Enjoyment of your painting is the most important thing in your practice. Really the most. Of course, ambition to get better, yada yada. But if you let ambition and hard work and all that laborious chores that you think that you need to do overshadow your need to enjoy the painting, then you won't be motivated to keep going. Yeah, so then at this point, I think I am just putting in marks here and there, and I decided to go into the leaves. I didn't do that much for the leaves, but I just thought I'll put a little bit of some veins on some of the leaves. So just using the green that is on my palette, and just a tiny, make sure that it's a little bit more saturated than before. You can add indigo into the green to give it a little bit more of a dark, shadowy hue. So at this point of the painting, it feels good already. I'm really quite happy with the layering of the first couple ones. But then I realized I forgot to layer the bottom one. There's a peach colored one. So I'm mixing a bit of orange with pink and very loosely carving out the shadows between the petals and any other marks that I feel like making. As I get to the last flower here, it's usually the most relaxed and I can just be a bit more looser. So I'm experimenting with a bit more of a yellow ochre there. And just trying out your marks. Try out the different marks. Painting is just mark making. We are just putting dots and lines onto a page in our own expression. And we do not need to look like anything else or anyone else. We really, really don't. Your mark is special. Okay, so I'm using sepia now, which is a dark brown, and I'm going around the whole painting, just putting my marks of dark sepia paint. It's almost like an outline kind of thing, and it's really, really nice to just do that, making sure that I, create the depth. And there's a little hack I find with floral paintings is to make sure there's enough neutral and earth tones. If you really like painting bright like I do, and I use a lot of pinks and yellows and reds and blues, make sure to balance everything with some browns, some ochre, so that your painting has something to sort of fall solidly back on. Anyway, that's what I find is really, really nice to do. Yeah. I'm just putting some final marks on the leaves as well. And remembering, if you do paint with me, tag me on Instagram when you post it. I'd love to see your paintings and I'd love to share it as well. And if you're interested in joining my Patreon, we have a little community on Facebook where all the Patreon members, post all the paintings from our tutorials, and we comment on each other, we cheer each other on. I get to give you more in-depth comments and feedback if you like to have them, in the community. And also we paint live once a month for my inner circle tier. It's really lots of fun. Please check out my Patreon if you want to go a little bit deeper. So that's it. I just put some final yellow, cadmium yellow in the centers there, and I'm gonna call it done. My colorful poppies to decompress today. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon in the description below. We have a little Patreon community, and in the inner circle tier, we meet once a month live and we paint together. And if you just really want to deepen your relationship with your art, with your painting, check it out. All right, it's really, really nice. And otherwise, yeah, I hope to see you here again next week. Hopefully my Open Studios video will be out soon. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, you'll find out. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye.